The emergency room of St. Jude's was a symphony of controlled chaos, but the screaming coming from Trauma Bay 3 cut through the noise like a jagged knife. A 34-year-old man had been rushed in, his body convulsing in absolute agony, yet the trauma team was completely paralyzed. His vitals were crashing, his skin was pale and clammy, but the ultrasound showed absolutely no internal bleeding, and the toxicology report was completely clean. The attending physician was shouting for a broad-spectrum painkiller, desperately trying to stabilize the patient while flying entirely blind. It was a medical ghost story. The man was dying of a pain that didn't seem to have a physical source. Priya, a senior triage nurse with 12 years of experience, pushed through the swinging glass doors of the trauma bay carrying a tray of crash meds. She had seen every horrific injury imaginable, developing the thick emotional armor required to survive a career in emergency medicine. But the moment her eyes locked onto the writhing patient, something inside Priya's brain violently, fundamentally snapped. She didn't just feel a pang of sympathy. A sudden blinding wave of white-hot agony erupted in the lower left quadrant of her own abdomen. The tray of medication slipped from her hands, shattering across the linoleum floor as Priya collapsed to her knees, screaming in the exact same pitch and clutching the exact same spot as the dying man on the bed. The trauma team froze, staring in absolute bewilderment as their senior nurse curled into a fetal position on the floor, gasping for air. "It's his spleen," Priya choked out, her voice trembling as tears streamed down her face, her hands digging into her own perfectly healthy stomach. "It's not his appendix. It's a micro-rupture in the splenic artery. It's hiding behind the tissue. I can feel it tearing." The attending physician hesitated for a fraction of a second before grabbing the portable ultrasound wand and jamming it deep into the patient's lower left side, adjusting the angle based on Priya's agonizing cries. There, hidden perfectly behind a fold of tissue, was a massive fatal arterial bleed that the initial scan had completely missed. They rushed the man to surgery, saving his life with less than 3 minutes to spare, leaving Priya alone on the floor of the empty trauma bay. As the patient's gurney disappeared down the hall, the excruciating pain in Priya's abdomen vanished as quickly as it had arrived, leaving her gasping and covered in a cold sweat. She slowly pulled up her scrub top, expecting to see a bruise, a mark, or some logical explanation for the agony she had just endured. Her skin was perfectly flawless, unmarked and healthy, but her nervous system was still vibrating with the phantom echo of a dying man's ruptured artery. Priya didn't know it yet, but a recent, seemingly minor concussion had rewired the fundamental architecture of her brain, turning her empathy into a terrifying, physical disease. Priya sat inside the claustrophobic tube of the hospital's MRI machine, the rhythmic thumping of the magnets echoing the terrified beating of her own heart. When the scans finally came back, the chief neurologist pointed to a microscopic web of scar tissue near her somatosensory cortex, the result of a seemingly minor car accident she had suffered 3 weeks prior. He explained that the human brain is equipped with a strict neurological firewall, a biological barrier designed to separate our own physical sensations from the outside world. But the blunt force trauma had caused a microscopic tear in that firewall, causing her neural pathways to crosswire in a way medical science had rarely documented. Priya hadn't just experienced a panic attack in the trauma bay. Her brain had literally forgotten where her body ended and the dying patient's body began. To understand what was happening to Priya, you have to look at a groundbreaking neurological discovery made in the 1990s, the existence of mirror neurons. When you watch someone accidentally hit their thumb with a hammer, you instinctively wince, pulling your own hand back as if you were the one who got struck. This happens because the exact same neurons that fire when you experience pain also fire when you simply observe someone else experiencing it. In a normal brain, a secondary system immediately kicks in, sending a chemical signal that says, "Don't worry, that is their hand, not yours," effectively muting the physical sensation. But Priya's scar tissue had completely severed that muting system, leaving her mirror neurons firing at maximum capacity with absolutely nothing to hold them back. Renowned neuroscientist Vittorio Gallese described this phenomenon through his shared manifold hypothesis, arguing that human empathy is not a logical thought process, but a literal physical simulation. Gallese proved that we understand the emotions and pains of others by subconsciously recreating their exact neurological states within our own minds. For Priya, this simulation was no longer subconscious. It had manifested into an extreme, undocumented variant of mirror-touch synesthesia. If she saw a patient with a broken femur, her brain would flood her own leg with the exact chemical pain signals of a shattered bone, despite her leg being perfectly intact. She was no longer just observing the suffering of the emergency room. She was physically absorbing it into her own nervous system. Despite the terrifying nature of her diagnosis, Priya refused to take medical leave, realizing that her neurological glitch had inadvertently turned her into the ultimate diagnostic tool. She became a medical ghost, quietly walking the halls of the ICU and diagnosing complex, invisible illnesses simply by standing next to the patients. She felt the sharp, localized burning of an undetected stomach ulcer in a crying child, and the heavy, suffocating pressure of a silent heart attack in an elderly woman. Doctors began to secretly rely on her terrifying intuition, bypassing expensive scans and blood tests because Priya's nervous system was faster and more accurate than any machine in the hospital. She was saving lives at an unprecedented rate, hailed as a miracle worker by her colleagues. But the physical toll of carrying the hospital's pain was quietly destroying her. For the first few weeks, Priya managed her condition with a strict regimen of isolation, retreating to a dark, empty supply closet the moment her shift ended to let her overloaded nervous system reset. But as the days bled into weeks, the microscopic tear in her neurological firewall began to widen, and the symptoms escalated from invisible pain to terrifying physical manifestations. A young construction worker was brought into the ER with a severe chemical burn across his right forearm, screaming as the nurses frantically flushed the wound with saline. Priya stood 10 feet away, her hands shoved deep into her pockets, trying desperately to block out the agonizing, searing heat radiating up her own arm. But when she finally retreated to the bathroom and rolled up her sleeve, she didn't just feel the burn. Her own skin had erupted into a massive, angry red blister, a psychosomatic echo of a wound she had never actually received. Her brain was no longer just simulating the pain of others. It was actively commanding her body to physically react to injuries that didn't belong to her. If a patient was suffocating from an asthma attack, Priya's throat would physically constrict, her oxygen levels plummeting as her lungs sympathetically mirrored the crisis. If a trauma victim was bleeding out, her own blood pressure would inexplicably crash, sending her into a state of cold, shivering shock despite having no internal injuries. The hospital, once a place of healing, had transformed into a house of horrors, a minefield of agony where every glance at a suffering patient was a physical assault on her own body. She started wearing dark sunglasses and noise-cancelling headphones in the hallways, desperately trying to sever the sensory inputs that were feeding her rogue mirror neurons. But the physical pain was only the beginning of the nightmare. The true horror of extreme mirror-touch synesthesia was what it was doing to her sense of self. The human ego, the fundamental understanding of I am me and you are you, relies entirely on the brain's ability to map the physical boundaries of its own body. Because Priya's brain was constantly flooded with the sensory data of dozens of strangers, her internal map began to dissolve, blurring the lines of her own identity. She would sit in the cafeteria and suddenly burst into uncontrollable sobbing tears, overwhelmed by a profound grief that belonged to a grieving widow sitting 3 tables away. She would feel sudden spikes of intense, irrational anger, only to realize she was mirroring the silent rage of a frustrated doctor pacing at the end of the hall. Priya was no longer a single, cohesive personality. She was becoming a chaotic, swirling vessel for the collective emotional and physical state of everyone around her. She stopped calling her family, terrified that she wouldn't be able to tell if the love she felt for them was her own, or just a reflection of their affection for her. She would stare at her own reflection in the bathroom mirror for hours, touching her face, desperately trying to anchor her consciousness to the physical reality of her own skin. But the reflection staring back felt increasingly like a stranger. an empty shell that only existed to process the suffering of the world. The ultimate diagnostic tool was slowly being erased, her own soul dissolving into the overwhelming, deafening static of human empathy. Desperate and rapidly losing her grip on reality, Priya sought out Dr. Elias Vance, a controversial neuroscientist who had spent his career studying the extreme fringes of human consciousness. She sat in his dimly lit office, her body trembling as she absorbed the dull, throbbing arthritis radiating from Vance's left knee, a pain she knew wasn't her own. She explained the psychosomatic blisters, the crashing blood pressure, and the terrifying sensation that her own personality was being overwritten by the patients in the ER. Vance didn't look at her with pity or skepticism. Instead, he leaned forward, his eyes wide with a mixture of scientific awe and deep, unsettling concern. He pulled up a 3D rendering of her latest MRI, pointing to the glowing hyperactive clusters of mirror neurons that were completely dominating her cerebral cortex. "You aren't just experiencing extreme empathy, Priya," Vance explained, his voice barely above a whisper as he traced the glowing neural pathways on the screen. "Your brain has completely abandoned the biological concept of the individual's self. It is operating under the assumption that every human body in your vicinity is simply an extension of your own nervous system." He explained that in a normal brain, mirror neurons act like a radio receiver, tuning into the emotional frequencies of others to build social bonds. But Priya's brain had mutated into a massive, unregulated satellite dish, pulling in the raw, unfiltered sensory data of every consciousness within her line of sight. She wasn't just mirroring the pain of her patients. Her brain was actively trying to process and heal their injuries as if they were happening to her own flesh. Vance proposed a terrifying radical theory based on Vittorio Galese's work. Priya had inadvertently tapped into the raw biological network that connects all human beings. He argued that the concept of the individual is just a convenient illusion created by the brain to keep us focused on our own survival. In reality, human consciousness is a deeply interconnected web, a shared manifold of emotional and physical data that we are normally shielded from by our neurological firewalls. Because Priya's firewall was destroyed, she was experiencing the true, overwhelming nature of human existence, a collective, shared consciousness, where the suffering of one is literally the suffering of all. She was the first human being to truly feel the weight of the world, and it was a weight that her isolated, individual nervous system was never designed to carry. Vance offered her a choice: a highly experimental, incredibly dangerous neurosurgical procedure designed to artificially cauterize her mirror neuron network, effectively blinding her to the emotions of others. The surgery would stop the psychosomatic injuries and rebuild the walls of her identity, but it carried a massive risk of leaving her completely, permanently devoid of all human empathy. She would become a sociopath by design, unable to feel love, compassion, or connection, trapped in a cold, isolated void of her own mind. Priya sat in the silence of the office, the weight of the decision pressing down on her as she felt the rhythmic, anxious beating of Vance's heart echoing in her own chest. She had to choose between losing her mind to the pain of the world or saving her mind by sacrificing the very thing that made her human. Priya stood in the sterile, blindingly white prep room outside of Dr. Vance's surgical theater, staring at her reflection in the stainless steel mirror above the sink. She had made her choice. She was going to let Vance cauterize her mirror neurons, choosing the cold, isolated safety of a sociopathic mind over the agonizing burden of collective human suffering. She traced the outline of her own face, trying to memorize the feeling of her own skin, knowing that when she woke up, she would never truly feel connected to another human being again. But as she stared into her own eyes, the rhythmic, anxious beating of Vance's heart in the next room suddenly faded away, replaced by a strange, overwhelming rush of new, unfamiliar emotions. It wasn't the sharp, localized pain of a hospital patient or the dull ache of a doctor's arthritis. It was a massive, chaotic wave of curiosity, skepticism, and a deep, lingering sense of existential dread. Priya gripped the edges of the sink, her knuckles turning white as her brain desperately tried to process the sheer volume of the sensory data flooding her nervous system. She wasn't feeling the emotions of the surgical team, and she wasn't feeling the patients in the ward below. The emotional signatures were coming from somewhere else entirely. She closed her eyes, letting her rogue mirror neurons trace the invisible threads of the shared manifold, following the connection past the walls of the hospital, past the boundaries of her city, and out into the digital void. Her brain had evolved past the need for physical proximity. It was now networking with the consciousness of anyone who was actively focusing their attention on her story. She slowly opened her eyes, but she was no longer looking at her reflection in the stainless steel mirror. She was looking directly into the lens of the camera. "I can feel you," Priya whispered, her voice trembling as she stared through the screen, her eyes locking onto the exact position of the viewer. "I can feel the slight tension in your shoulders, the shallow rhythm of your breathing, and that quiet, nagging voice in the back of your mind, wondering if any of this is actually real." She didn't blink, her gaze piercing through the digital barrier, stripping away the comforting illusion that you are just a passive observer watching a fictional story on a screen. You think you are safe because there is a screen between us, because you are sitting in your room, separated by miles of fiber optic cables and digital code. But empathy doesn't care about distance, and my brain no longer cares about the boundaries of the physical world. If you are observing me, your neurons are firing in sync with mine. Priya leaned closer to the camera, the cold, sterile light of the prep room casting long, terrifying shadows across her face as she delivered her final, chilling diagnosis. "I can feel the exact moment your heart rate elevated when I looked at you, and I can feel the sudden, uncomfortable urge you have to look away from the screen. You are experiencing a microscopic fraction of my condition right now. Your brain is simulating my fear, my exhaustion, and my desperate need to be understood. We are already connected, wired together in the exact same shared manifold, and the only difference between you and me is that your firewall hasn't broken yet." Priya paused, the silence stretching into an unbearable, intimate tension as she reached out, her fingertips gently touching the inside of the camera lens. "I was going to let them cut this out of me, to burn away the empathy, so I could finally be alone in my own head," she said, a sad, knowing smile crossing her lips. "But why would I choose to be alone when I can feel exactly how many of you are out there, hiding behind your screens, feeling just as isolated and terrified as I am?" The screen suddenly cut to black, severing the visual connection, but leaving behind a profound, echoing silence that seemed to vibrate in the room. The story of the woman who felt everyone's pain was over, but the unsettling sensation of being watched, of being felt, lingered long after the video ended. The system will always try to tell you who you are, what you should fear, and when your time is up. I am Think Lent. Keep thinking.